Oh, that's right. It's this horse. It's that occasional nagging feeling I have when I remember that I knew how to draw, or I can draw, and I don't. So, try to get back on that horse. Talk about the color form drawings that I do, and sort of how they work. The first ones were just sort of a practice in which I would just drop color, which I'm going to do now, and then try to make something out of said color. I'm going to go with super primaries on this one, just to start back. With these alcohol markers, which I like a lot, because of how graphic they are, and just sort of they feel both like paint and both like ink, so those are fun. Alcohol markers, you gotta go light to dark if you want to do it right, or if you don't want to blend too much. So I'm gonna start with my yellow. Seems easy, right? Should be easy. We'll see. Let's do it. The great thing about these two is that they blend. Once you sort of establish a shape and before they dry, you can just go in and make that color that you wanted super solid. And again, I'm sort of going to use the colors to define the shapes too. So the yellow will be our round but pointed shapes today. And again, this is much exercise and sort of meditative drawing, because again, I'm not planning this, it's just kind of improvised. And again, getting back on the horse. So we'll see how this works out. This would be a lot more exciting if I could play music during it, but thanks to all those kind of like content picturing algorithms and all that stuff. No music. Let's get my like silly voice and all the fans that are going to my COVID bunker right now because it's the middle of the day and insanely hot in my attic. All right. Got yellow down. Let's go for a red next. I think I'm going to do 2 passes of colors, right? Because the one thing about these is they don't overlap very well, especially if you're going light to dark or dark to light, or rather dark to light. So I'm going to do a run of one, the next, and then do it all over again. I always thought these red ones looked like organs. I don't know. Balloon animal organs. I think the way I accidentally started doing these was I failed my way into, I wouldn't say doing these correctly, but at least more correctly. I was inking things, I was trying to use them like watercolors. I would start with pencil and then go to black ink and then add these, and it would just become these colossal messes. And these markers are kind of expensive, so I was just wasting a bunch of markers and paper, and then I decided to do color form instead. What does it have to do with Amway, Nathan? Everything. Doesn't everything have everything to do with Amway? Is that the horse which you're speaking of? So again, by kind of messing these up and making these big muddy messes and bleeding, even though they're not supposed to bleed, blacks into the inks, I just started doing the inks first. And again, it became a sort of exercise in what you can kind of make without having a clear pattern or idea necessarily at first. And again, what I liked about that is then I began thinking about, well, what does this color sort of imply shape-wise? What can we do if the visual language, as it were, of blue is round, and if yellow in this one is pointy, and if red is organs or whatever? And what I loved about doing a lot of these and getting further into it is that that sort of visual language sort of did itself and started informing itself. And then when people would see these, they would see genitals in them, which sometimes it was sort of suggestive in that way, but other times it was just like, well, I mean, they do sort of like organs, so, but I like how people would run with the shapes, what they saw in it. You can kind of see even when I'm doing the blues over the yellows, it still kind of looks a little green, although that's not supposed to happen. Oh, we got Nathan, hello, Wayne, hello, Rachel, hello, Doug, hello, Jessica, Josh, Christina, Beth, Isha, oh, hello. Hope you're all doing well in these quarantine times. Also, this is a good exercise for me to try to talk and draw at the same time, and really, if there wasn't a camera in my way, or I would be in the way of, or being cognizant of, I don't know if it's because of my nearsightedness or I'm getting older and need readers, but I usually ink from about right here. So this is a good excuse for me to pull back a little bit. So yeah, red's the blue animal sausage organs, and blue is these sort of round things. At least that's what I'm figuring out so far with this one. What else do we need a blue in here? If you guys liked it or want to do it again, send me those 3-word descriptions, or those 3-item things, or 3-idea things to put into drawings. Those were fun. And I may start doing those again because those were also good practice. Lots of times, like these shapes, I end up getting stuck and sort of this kind of beta way of drawing where I'm improving it a little more than I think I am. and I end up just drawing the same thing over and over. So it was fun doing some of those drawing prompts from you guys, because then I would have to remember how to draw a garbage can, or I would have to go in and figure out what the best way or what the best color with alcohol markers to do volcano lava or whatever else. And I'm looking at this, and I've made this mistake before. I hate this green color. It's not that it's a bad color, it's just when it gets into these 2-3 other colors, it ends up in this very 1980s, and not in a good way, elementary school product scheme looking palette. I'm going to go real light on that green. Alright, so that first pass of color, I'm going to go back, add some more hidden organs. The fun thing about these when you're doing just fake color form, I guess, or I don't know, fake whatever. When you're thinking about layers and perspective, is you can kind of subvert perspective also. So this to me obviously feels like it's in front of this, but then you can pull things around and put them wherever to kind of give it some visual question to where things actually are in terms of size and perspective. That when you're drawing from real life, you're obviously trying to get to that place that makes sense and represents actual depth or where those things would exist in real layers. But in this, you can kind of visually mess with that. Also, I don't know what I'm talking about, guys. Never do. Yeah, Sarah, those colors are hyper Simpsons, and I think it's that yellow, which is all their the skin tone of the Simpsons, combined with that blue, which is like Marge's hair. And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because now I'm going to go in and really play that up. Let's go back to yellow, and we will add. Why don't we add Bart? Oh yeah, and that red is also definitely Marge's pearls, or necklace that she wears. And where can we put Lisa? There you go. Some added Simpsons. And for the hell of it, let's add a tiny Homer right there. And then we'll go in and we'll put one of Marge's necklaces. But in slight organ form. connecting in Lisa's head right there. And maybe exiting out over here. We need something happening over here, so let's bring Marge's hair out. See, that's what's always so fun about the prompts. Ideas beget ideas. Got a little bit of Marge right there. This is quite balanced, like I want it to be yet. Maybe something here. So we balance it out down here. So let's add a green boys. Here. Bring out a little more green. Back in that idea of Marge's necklace coming out of there. All right. Hey Camel. Hey Luke. All right, it's time for ink. This is always a sort of tough choice for me because every different type of brush pen has sort of its own character. It always kind of comes down, honestly, to these boulders that brush. Yeah, these four. Oh, what are you? Oh, yeah. Aside from the Prisma ones, they're all Japanese pens. And I think they're actually meant for calligraphy and not what I'm using them for. But they're soft, medium, there's more of a traditional brush, and then this this Prisma one is just a brush one. I'm going to hold off on this one. This one's a little bit harder. For you. You were the medium point, and that's sort of fun. We'll come back to that. But this one really very much enjoy this guy. Has the loosest feel of all of them. Which gives it more of that organic touch that I'm kind of hoping to get in here. And the other thing I like about inking these after the fact is that you can go in and again think about shape and where things form together and how they layer. So before where that was just laying over there, now I want it inside of that yellow shape. And I want this yellow shape to dip in other places than it is right now. And I want this green to be over top that red instead of where it's like kind of bleeding over into it. So you have to be a little bit more intentional about how you put the black ink in than when you just sort of ink over a pencil drawing. But again, you can make curious kind of things happen. Like this. It's kind of silly. I don't usually talk, sorry, too much during this because this is the exact time I kind of hold my breath with every kind of line. I feel this, for me anyways, this is always the part that makes or breaks these. Where I completely regret inking it, or I realize I should have been doing something different, or whatever else. So it's always just sort of a creative gamble. And I'm going to love or hate something at this point. It's like that, way too thick. Because why would this be thicker than this right here? I'm going to go back in. But happy mistakes, right? Maybe I'm going to make the outlines now and all the blue thicker than everything else. Sometimes I will entirely switch up the brushes too, or the pens and the thickness and types of pens for the different colors, again to kind of do and play on that thing I was talking about earlier, where each sort of color represents a different form or shape. Thanks for bearing with me, guys, too. A lot of this, especially, again, this kind of getting back on the horse process, is doing something and reminding myself, like, oh yeah, this is the thing you figured out and made a mental note of, and now you're having to remember it. So talking to you virtual friends just really helps that process. Ugh, too thick. Hey, Maddie. That would be a welcome, Matt, if you came and knocked on my window and scared me while I was intently doing this. I have a good buddy named Juan Carlos, and me and Juan Carlos used to drink a lot, and sometimes after a long night of drinking, I would wake up the next day and Juan Carlos would have written, signed, or drawn on a painting I had in my house. And at the time, I was, I had a little bit more of an anxiety problem, and I wasn't entirely happy about that. But as I've gotten older, and I look back on those like thrift store paintings or whatever else was in my house that Juan Carlos had written on, one of the best things he wrote on one of them in the very corner, sort of hidden on it, was, "We're all going to be okay." And he was right. And I look at it now and I'm like, it's endearing and I love it. So Matt, if you came and banged on my window and I put a huge streak across the drawing, I would be like, oh, there's a time Maddie came and surprised me. But also you'd have to climb up on my roof, Matt, because I'm in the attic and that's dangerous. So maybe like set fireworks off outside my house instead. Juan Carlos was a little crazy, but we were all a little crazy at that time. That was like one of those amazing chapters of anyone's life, but mine in particular, where like everything was the worst and the best, and like we were just really figuring life out, I think. And I did it! Smeared the ink already. Another thing I forgot that I did. And I actually got a stinking glove for my hand so that I wouldn't do that. And hard lesson learned and what I need to remember. And also, Maddie, I'm confident there are a bunch of people who might remember me from a certain time and were like, that dude was crazy. Because, you know what? There probably was, no probably about it. There's definite periods of time in my life where I wouldn't say my mental health lapsed, but due to horrible stuff that was happening, maybe, I don't know, in my relationship or marriage or whatever else, it was, you end up being up here in a certain way. Yes, Juan Carlos was very enigmatic, Matt, that is for sure. He's like a comet, like a beautiful comet that comes around. Well, JC was also one of those people who, like a bunch of JCs I know, whether it's Jonathan Coward or Jacob Clifton or whoever else, came around and had profound, did it again. Had profound creative implications for me sometimes. And I really, honestly, I don't think I would be talking to a camera and doing this right now if, like, in 2005, before it was even a thing that anyone thought about, Juan Carlos was like, vlogging, it's going to be the next thing and it's awesome and you guys should do it. And we're like, nah, we're serious artists, we make videos only. But man, he was totally right. 100% right. And I'm glad he was. There's a lot of pressure. Well, don't know if, I think a lot of people who don't create things entirely understand this. But especially if you make long form things, and especially if it's something like this is a good exercise for me, right? Like I enjoy making these things and whatever else, but putting 120 hours into the production of a video is really something else entirely. And I wouldn't say you die a little bit when you do that. You definitely put a lot of yourself into that process. And for me, that process cost me a lot in my life, not in like a terrible way and not in a way that it should have, but it's a very complicated relationship I have with making long form video. So to be able to make video like this and to be able to draw or in a way that's not as involved or not as critical as, again, spending 120 hours on a painting is very nice for me and my anxiety, as it turns out. I used to feel like, anyways, that if I was going to make something with video, especially, it had to be super definitive, right? Like it had to be it had to go big or go home, or like do something really phenomenal, or don't do anything at all. And I'm still kind of like that. And that was a lot of undue pressure on myself. And I think anyone who, Matt, you're a perfect example, was around for any of those videos that I made. It was a lot of fun, but also I was very stressed, and I didn't have a very supportive, I don't know. At times I had a very supportive partner, and then other times a very unsupportive person. So that stress added to my fear and dilemma of doing those things. So anyways, Juan Carlos totally was the guy who was like, "Yeah, man, just turn the camera on, do your thing. You are art. Be art." I was like, "I'm not art, but yes. I like this approach." And here we are. All right, where do we go? Where are we missing? There we go. I'm going to do a thing in a minute, which I should have done before I started this one, which sort of helps in this process also. Which is kind of go through my notebook, see what that, again, those kind of things I learned and forgot, or figured out visually and then forgot. I'll try to get this one done. Okay, so first pass at inks. Now it's time to like go back in, add the sort of heavier shades to where it needs it. Usually just the underside of these areas. Again, we sort of decided that the blue was going to have a heavier weight because I messed that part up and the rest, so it's going back in. Adding some of that. It's adding these tweaks here and there. The other fun thing about the alcohol markers is they sort of leave these shapes. I don't know if that's picking up there, like different areas of tone, and then you can go in and kind of mess with that also. I think I used to do a lot. I don't do as much anymore, although I still like the effect of it. And it's in that kind of cartoon paradigm, which I tend to work in. The cartoon, comic book paradigm. Paradigm, is that the word I'm looking for? Style, whatever. So I usually put a big thick black outline around everything when I was done. I don't do that as much anymore, but I still think about it, like right now. Nice thing about it is that visual language of cartoons. The other thing about it, though, is it sort of lets me hide some of my mistakes. If I messed up lines somewhere, or if I needed to redefine different parts of the line. Oh, we forgot this entirely. Marge's necklace. I think I'm happy with that for now. So, again, 2 passes at the inking, and I'm going to go in and add a couple little shapes, or lines to help define the shapes. All right. Second moment of truth is trying to figure out if this is going to be shaded. I think these are fun without it, but for practice sake, I'm going to go and shade this one in so that it isn't an entire waste. If I do shade it and don't like it, take a picture of it real quick. And let's start making, again, a kind of visual language. So out of even the cross hatching on this and the shading. Okay, so these are the where's the bold? Whoa, lost a pen already. No, or did I? There it is. So you guys know how these works. These are the size of the tip of the pen on these. And what I like to think about when I'm doing these, so we have our thinnest one, right? That's our smallest. This is probably the finest pen that I have, and so okay, I go, all right, the finest one is going to be, and since I have, you can go 2 ways. Like, this is the least amount of green. The finest kind of detailing with this may be green, because then I don't have to do it the most, but I actually think it should be yellow, even though that's the most to fill in. Essentially, I can get the most bang for my buck and the best sort of look and feel out of it by using that very thin line. Again, this is normally where I would be 2 inches from the drawing, but y'all need to see. I had a really great painting teacher named Dan Sutherland who would get pretty frustrated with me in terms of the ways that I shaded things or figured out lighting or whatever else. Because his thing, and he's not wrong at all, is that you should totally make a model of this and then light it and then see how the light works on it. I did not do that. Obviously, you should do that, but what I can kind of do sometimes by not doing that is play with the sort of visual language and understanding of where light and shade should be, and sometimes skew it, make areas appear darker that should not be, give others depth this way where it shouldn't be as dark. Most times, 100 times out of 10, no one notices that, but maybe they'll feel it when they look at it. And also, it's like 90% for me. So, and I already screwed up. Went from yellow to blue. Back to yellow, Will. Just get in the zone. I did do a painting, maybe I'll dig up sometime. As I'm doing now, and as I guess I've always done, always like this idea of drawing kind of grotesque cartoons. Because cartoons are sort of a weird abstraction of human anatomy and people and whatever else anyways. So I like to take it even further, and I like to think about the, especially if I'm drawing teeth or something like that, the kind of how sort of gross sometimes human anatomy and parts are if you take them out of context. And so I was drawing these like sort of Francis Bacon looking cartoons because of their abstraction or the way that they were abstracted, and my good friend Catherine made a little model, a clay model out of one of them for me, and I actually lit it and painted it, and it turned out okay. I'm not a very good painter, as it turns out, or I'm not very good at painting from life. How about that? I have to kind of put life in my head and blend it up and mess it up, and then it'll come back here. So yeah, again, I like to think about this if it was a movie, who are you casting for what? Right? Like, the yellow gets its own sort of shapes that are repeated. It's going to get its own fine point marker to sort of define its shapes. And same goes for the rest. So we got these, they're all kind of bulbous and whatever else, but the blue are these kind of like long, chunkier bubble shapes. The yellow is sort of the round shapes too, but they all have points. The red is the organs. The green is just whatever, because turns out I didn't really need the green. But, you know, we're going from a very fine point, and we want to go to a much thicker point for the blue, because it's a different character now. So I'm going to use this much thicker pen to fill in that. And I'm going to fix it where I screwed that up earlier. But you can tell doing this kind of ink work with a thicker pen gives it a little bit of a different character. And again, sort of helps inform that color. I don't know if you guys can see that, the difference really between the two. But this gives it a different feel, obviously, than that much finer work through there. So it's not, as we often, or I try to often talk about, it's not art with a capital A, but they're the formal considerations I think about and the little kind of visual nuances and fun I like to have when drawing, I guess, really anything. And again, I don't know if you can see this in the video, but you can see where there's sort of some variance in how bright or how saturated the markers were. I think that's always a really fun thing for me too, because then I can play off that when I go in to shade it. Mm-hmm. Other thing, although it's probably going to be hard to see, or it's going to be hard for it to come through doing this, is that this is just a simple, like, Illustrator year one trick. But if it's round, when I'm doing that line work around there, I'm going to make my little hatching round as well. You might be saying right now, Will, those Prisma pens seem to be so much easier to control than that brush pen. Why didn't you just use them to ink the whole thing? I'm determined to master this stupid pen. I love how it feels. It's very unpredictable and it's a lot of fun because of that, even though it's gonna mess up throughout times and I'm gonna spot it up with my hands or whatever else. There's something very satisfying about it when you do get it right. Are we done with blue? I think so. Just a little bit more right there. All right, so we got 005 for yellow. We got 08 for blue. Let's go with 03 for red. I don't know if you noticed, I went in more with red and added these lines. And it's part because I want the red to feel a little glossier. Like balloons, like organs, whatever else. So I'm not going to shade this one as heavily as I may have done the yellow. Because again, I'm thinking about what's the visual language that I want the red to have, or I want the yellow to have. Although if it is in the way back like this one, we're going to add a little bit. And again, since I'm going about this backwards, where I start with the colors and let the colors sort of determine what the shape's going to be and whatever else, it is good practice for when you are picking colors out and you are trying to work on your visual storytelling, whether it's video or paintings or whatever you're working on. Because colors do have certain connotations and they do invoke certain feelings. You know, Sarah kind of nailed it spot on earlier when she's like, yo, that yellow and blue and red, for that matter, totally remind me of The Simpsons. And she's right. Those colors sort of invoke a certain, especially primary colors like that, invoke a certain sort of thought or feeling. And you can play with that. So when you do go to, you know, doing some like sort of test drawings like this, or when you're playing around with color and form, I think it is good because you can take that and you can take what you learn about the sort of visual story that it has, using those colors, and apply it to something else later, right? It doesn't just have to be it doesn't just have to be sort of improv or you know, the bus happens to be gray because buses are gray or whatever else. If I feel like this pop and very excited sort of color scheme works and I want a bus to be very active in a picture, am I going to make it gray or am I going to make it something like this? And then you can just take that sort of like basic color theory stuff you're learning by just noodling around and reapply it for when you do want to sit down and sketch something out and do a big drawing of something that has more of a visual narrative to it and a story. Again, we're doing this opposite. We're letting the medium sort of dictate the narrative. But I think it is an important thing. It's why Pixar, it's half their success, right? Is their ability to figure out the right colors for the right things. All right, what do we got next? So we got green left. Let's go with the thickest. Oh, I already did a green by accident, but it's fine. Let's go for the thickest one for green. And we're going to go real hard on this because I want green to appear to be textured in a certain way. So the majority of green is going to be hatched in. All right, there we got it. A little improv Simpsons piece. Getting back on the horse. Here's a thing I do sometimes that feels appropriate now. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I won't do it. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll feel like maybe I need something else here, maybe I need something here, maybe I need wherever. And if I've established at this point that it's the Simpsons, and I do this more when I'm working in Procreate because I can undo it if I don't like it, but maybe we'll do it here real quick. You know, think about the other kind of visual hallmarks of the Simpsons, like the lettering, like those clouds at the opening of the show. So then I'll take my stupid thick brush and I will add. Let's see, how would I add a Simpsons cloud? Cloud from like that logo there at the opening sort of bit on the Simpsons, which again isn't exactly like these shapes, but also isn't different from those shapes. I don't remember if the Simpsons are in red or it's in yellow, but we'll do both. There's that real distinct matte graining kind of S. Where can we put that in? Yeah, let's do it right there. So it kind of goes like. And then, ooh, some balance. I think that the in the Simpsons logo has that kind of neat look too. So it's that like. And yeah, let's just I'll go in and I'll add that sort of a bit of that look and texture of our other parts of this over the thing that isn't what we started with. So again, since I have sort of a visual organ language already, it's easy for me to gross up the Simpsons S into something that fits in. Again, same with the yellow. If we know that this is kind of pointy. Like our other S or the other yellow on here, then we know to make these things points. Other than just what it is with the Simpsons logo. I'm going to move some more ink around. So there we go. Improv Simpsons drawing. This is the 14th. Boom. We've done it. Alright guys, thanks. Maybe I'll draw some more in the future, forever. I don't know. Maybe I won't draw again for another couple months. But thanks for sticking in there. That's our final sort of improv color form drawing. And that's all I got for today, for drawing. Thanks.